Titanic embrace of the US space shuttle Atlantis and Russian space station Mir is about to end as the two prepare to go their separate ways. Packing up memories and mementos, US and Russian spacecraft prepare to go their separate ways after a historic union in space. Hundreds of kilometers above the Earth, US astronauts and Russian cosmonauts are preparing to go their separate ways. In a few hours' time, the US shuttle Atlantis will disengage from the Russian Mir space station. As CNN's Miles O'Brien reports, the successful teamwork points towards future joint missions.
Atlantis, Houston.
After 5 days joined in orbit, the so-called Mir-Atlantis complex will detach in a complex series of precisely choreographed maneuvers.
The orbiter would come off the bottom, the Soyuz is going to come off the top, the stack is going to rotate a little bit, the Soyuz is going to line up with this.
Finalized over the past few days in some detailed faxes between the control centers here and outside Moscow, the formation flying is designed to create a historic photo opportunity.
It's going to be a fascinating evolution, having three bodies flying separately in space when we do undock.
It all begins when cosmonauts Anatoly Soloviev and Nikolai Budarin climb into their Soyuz spaceship and slowly move to a point 200 feet away from the Russian space station. They will hold that position with cameras aimed at Atlantis and Mir. When Commander Hook Gibson gives the order, hooks will be released on the docking ring, and 3 springs will nudge the shuttle away. Atlantis will then fly around Mir, taking pictures of the space station and the Soyuz as it docks.
Well, undocking is going to be a lot of fun and a real experience for both Anatoly and us aboard Atlantis. It's going to be, I think, a little bit less constraining than the docking was.
In the final hours of the docked days of this mission, the record 10-member combined crew paused from their busy schedule of medicine and moving to offer fond farewells.
We wish you fair winds and following seas and soft landings. We will count the days until you come back and we get to see you again.
And so the hatches closed on this historic meeting in space, the first of 7 planned shuttle Mir dockings, which NASA sees as the forerunner to building an international space station. Despite cultural, technical, and geographic differences, NASA has now proven beyond doubt it can work in space with the Russians. This mission may not silence the most strident critics of the International Space Station, but with a key vote looming in Congress, for NASA, this success could not have been better timed. Miles O'Brien, CNN at the Johnson Space Center, Houston.
CNN plans to bring you live coverage of the space extravaganza, it says here, beginning at 1100 GMT.
At the hour, Space Odyssey 1995 nears its final act.
Bob Kane is at CNN Center with an update on the Atlantis MIR mission. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Stuart, Kitty. It is on this Independence Day that the linked-up Atlantis MIR spacecraft will part company in just over an hour. The shuttle will separate from the Russian space station, leaving behind 2 cosmonauts who arrived on Atlantis. 2 other cosmonauts and astronaut Norm Thagard, who spent 4 months in space, will return to Earth on Friday aboard Atlantis. Undocking is set for 7:10 a.m. Eastern Time, and we will bring it to you live during the first hour of Early Edition.
The hatches are sealed. Next, the big separation.
Catherine Calloway joins us from CNN Center with the latest from space.
Yeah, it should be exciting. The space travelers aboard the Atlantis MIR orbiter will achieve independence from one another in a half hour or so. 2 cosmonauts will record the event from their Soyuz spaceship, which will have attached from the Mir earlier. Now, when Atlantis returns to Earth, it will have onboard astronaut Norm Thagard and 2 Russians who have been on the Mir since March. Undocking is set for 7:10 a.m. Eastern Time, and CNN will, of course, carry it live during the first hour of Early Edition.
In space is about to come to an end. The US space shuttle Atlantis and the Russian Mir space station are scheduled to begin separating in less than 10 minutes' time. They've been docked together for 5 days. A short time ago, the Soyuz space capsule temporarily separated from Mir. It'll return to the station once the space shuttle Atlantis is safely underway. 2 Russian cosmonauts aboard the Soyuz will record the shuttle Mir separation. And stay with CNN International for live coverage of the separation. It starts in just a few minutes' time. World News returns. Closing the first chapter on the Mir Atlantis mission. We'll bring you live coverage of the separation of the spacecraft as they prepare to resume their separate journeys.
Television picture from Atlantis showing the Soyuz capsule with Soloviev and Budarin, the Mir 19 cosmonauts aboard, just about to put themselves in their final station-keeping position for the photographic documentation. 5 days of
A dramatic 5 days in space for U.S. astronauts and Russian cosmonauts are about to come to an end. In just a few seconds, I believe, time, the space shuttle Atlantis will separate from the Mir space station, where it's been docked for almost a week. We join CNN's domestic network for coverage of the live event.
2 minutes, 15 seconds.
Welcome back. This is John Holloman at CNN Center in Atlanta, welcoming CNN's international audience in 200 countries around the world to our CNN domestic audience, which has been here for a little while. We'll take you live back to space for what NASA managers and Russian Space Agency officials say will be one of the most dramatic picture stories we'll be able to bring you on this 4th of July. Let's go up and look at the picture coming in from the payload bay of the Space Shuttle Atlantis, where there are a couple of cameras looking up into space. Let me tell you what we've got here. Above the word "from" on your TV screen is a little black and white dot, and that black and white dot is in fact the Russian Soyuz capsule, which has the crew of the Mir space station aboard. For the past few minutes, it has been moving back from the shuttle Atlantis, the Atlantis MIR combination. And what is going on right now is it's pulling back about 200 feet away so that it can do some picture taking today of the undocking of Atlantis from the Mir. That undocking will take place in the next 5 minutes. CNN science correspondent Miles O'Brien, NASA astronaut Kevin Chilton, joining us from the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Gentlemen, as we look at these pictures, let's talk about how complex this maneuver is. Kevin, you and Miles were talking about this from the pilot perspective. Is it very difficult to do this piloting job of the Soyuz to get it away from the Mir?
Well, it's taken a lot of training, of course, to prepare for this, and Anatoly and Nikolai are well prepared. Anatoly has done this before on several other flights that he's made to Mir, so he's very familiar with this type of maneuver.
Stand by, gentlemen. The shuttle is just backed away from the Mir. Let's watch that.
Great.
We could listen to NASA's commentator Rob Navius probably as this happens. The undocking occurred a little bit ahead of schedule.
Three spacecraft orbiting in close proximity to one another. Atlantis, the Mir space station, and a Soyuz capsule filming this. This view from the centerline camera on Atlantis showing it departing from the Crystal module's docking port.
So you're looking into the middle of the docking side of the Mir space station now from the shuttle Atlantis.
Now, Kevin, that is good news to see that, because there were some
point underneath the Mir.
There were some backup plans in place, which would have required them to fire pyrotechnic bolts or even do a spacewalk.
Right. If this normal system had not worked, which just simply drives the hooks with little motors to open up, then they would have had to fire a pyrotechnic system to separate. And had that failed, we had a third method of getting apart, and that would have included an EVA.
Now, gentlemen, you can see the Mir slowly disappearing on the top of our TV screens as the shuttle drops away from it. What's going to happen now is that the shuttle will pull back till it is sort of looking at the side of Mir, and then it will back away 700 feet to begin this fly around. There's a woman's voice speaking Russian that we'll be able to hear on our feed from Atlantis. It's the voice of astronaut Bonnie Dunbar, maybe the best Russian-speaking woman in the space program, and she's communicating back and forth with the Mir crew, which, as we say, is now aboard that Soyuz module up in the upper left-hand corner of your screen.
Station-keeping position, watching Atlantis.
Soyuz capsule is in its station-keeping mode, as they call it. That essentially means it's just relative to everybody else.
It's fixed. That's right.
Okay. It's a good camera platform.
Exactly.
I talked to a NASA official last week who said that he believes that the pictures that we will see later today from the Soyuz capsule cameras will be the most dramatic pictures
with our neighbors in space
that we see.
We'll look forward to returning.
It's the voice of Capcom Dave Wolf speaking to the Atlantis
We agree
crew.
with that, Dave. We agree 100%. We have all three vehicles in sight at this point, and in one of the simulations, the words cosmic ballet came to mind, and I guess that's where we are.
Shuttle Commander Hoot Gibson.
Well put, sir.
I don't know what this is a picture of. I guess maybe that's the Soyuz, the white spot over on the left-hand side of your screen. Anyway, I'm hoping.
In the meantime, aboard the Soyuz capsule, Commander Anatoly Soloviev is maintaining his orientation in relationship to the Mir space station by means of a manual attitude control system and a translational hand controller on the flight deck on the descent module of the Soyuz.
So translated, that means he's flying it by hand.
Exactly.
Atlantis, the sun's in the centerline camera. Inco has those, the iris, no action.
There in mission control, you see Story Musgrave, a man with even less hair than your commentator Holloman here, and to his right, Dave Wolf, who's communicating directly to Atlantis. The pictures that we've been seeing from space, this picture, for example, comes from a payload bay camera in the space shuttle. And this is another camera in the payload bay looking at the same thing. You can just see the tip of one of the Mir solar panels in the center, the upper center of your screen. And once again, there's where the two cosmonauts who are going to be in space
from the Mir space station
for a while are located.
Soyuz capsule from Atlantis.
John, there was a last-minute change of plans yesterday, which changes this maneuver slightly. It was going to be a flip-around maneuver in which pilot Hoot Gibson would turn the shuttle around and do this entire maneuver nose first. Because of the timings involved, they wanted to get good pictures with the sun in just the right place. They removed that maneuver from this whole scenario. So he's going to do this entire fly-around tail first. Now, I'm curious, if you've trained so many hours in one way, and you suddenly have this kind of a change, how much will that impact a person like Hoot Gibson?
Not at all, I don't think. Hoot will be able to handle the change without any problem. He spent a lot of time in the simulator, and he's seen it go from top to bottom, if you will, and seeing it go from bottom to top shouldn't be a big change for him.
He said that the docking itself was the piloting challenge of a career. I suppose anything after that is duck soup.
It should be pretty easy after that docking maneuver.
Hoot Gibson said yesterday that the undocking he thought would be much less complicated than the docking. But Miles, as you pointed out, if something had gone wrong in that maneuver, it would have been bad. The ground controllers have now taken control of one of the cameras in the shuttle's cargo bay, and that camera is moving from the shuttle up to the Mir space station, so we can get one. It won't be a last look, we trust, but the last look in a while, at least, of the Russians' home base in space.
You know, looking at that picture, you can see why they're so concerned about having the sun in just the right position for photography. You really can't get a picture.
It can really clobber your image if you have the sun in the wrong spot. And the timing should be such that we should be able to see the Soyuz redock with Mir.
20 minutes ago.
That should be coming up in about 5 minutes, too. 5 or 6 minutes.
The undocking of the shuttle Atlantis.
This is the voice of NASA commentator Rob Navius, who has been with us throughout this mission with play-by-play during these hours of the day.
And the way this maneuver is set up, Kevin, it would be very difficult for any of these vehicles to collide, right? I mean, they're sort of in different spheres, aren't they?
They are. They're in different planes or spheres, if you will. Plus, we have the added advantage of having pilots in both vehicles. They can look out the window and avoid each other should that be required. But the geometry is set up such that there's a low probability of them having even to take avoidance maneuvers.
So you wouldn't call this a risky maneuver then?
No, I wouldn't. No, but anytime you have three vehicles up there in close proximity, you have to deal with that with some level of concern, certainly.
I found it very interesting, gentlemen, that from the Russian side of things here, before the two cosmonauts left the Mir space station, they turned almost everything off inside it. And the reason for that was, just in case, after they go out and take these pictures, they can't redock with Mir, they're going to have to come back to Earth. That'll leave Mir unpopulated for a while, and they didn't want to leave leave the refrigerator and the ice cream maker and things like that on, because it would use up more power than is necessary. So they have to prepare for the worst before they leave the thing unpopulated for this trip that they're making in space.
That's exactly right. They're just thinking ahead and preparing for the worst case. Of course, we don't anticipate that happening.
That's sort of what we do at CNN, Kevin. We have Miles in Houston in case I can't speak, and I'm here in case something happens to him, and you in case everything else fails for us.
Ready for all scenarios.
Let's hope not.
That was an interesting view from the payload bay.
This view from payload bay cameras on Atlantis showing the Soyuz capsule with Soloviev and Budarin aboard.
Camera B's got a good view of Nick and Anatoly and Soyuz.
Kevin, give us a sense of the communication which would be going on between Soloviev and Gibson right now. They're talking on just handheld regular radios, right?
A VHF radio, just from one vehicle to the next, right, directly in space. Whereas what's kind of interesting, as I heard earlier, the communications to Moscow are being routed through a relay satellite down to Houston and then ground line through to Moscow. So communications can be very complicated here to make sure everybody's tied in and working from the same card.
You know, a layperson might look at it and say, how does it all work, especially when you compound all those patches with a language barrier?
I look at it and say, how does it all work? It's amazing.
Yeah, now, what's happening in space? The Soyuz capsule has done what it separated from Mir to do. The two cosmonauts in there have made some great movies, we hope. We hope there was the film in the camera and the videotape in the TV camera were working, and they're now beginning the move back to the space station. And it'll be a little while before we see the pictures that they've made, but we are anticipating that. Meanwhile, this picture from the space shuttle showing them as they move their way back toward the Mir. I think the different camera angles that we get on this will be very interesting to our viewers around the world as we continue talking about this. I don't believe I have seen picture from the Mir space station, and since they shut most of the systems down there, probably wouldn't anyway.
But the Mediterranean.
All the pictures are coming from Atlantis now, and the ones we get after the cosmonauts power up the space station again will, of course, some of the pictures at least will be from there.
I think we should note, John, that in the Soyuz capsule, there's very limited window space. I know that Budarin has the big window so that he can point his cameras out there, and Soloviev is actually flying using a periscope device, which offers very limited visibility, right?
Right, and so he has to keep careful track of the station and make sure he keeps it in the field of view.
Kevin, is it sort of like the old Apollo capsules? Is it that size and sort of configuration inside, or is it much larger than that?
That's a good approximation. It's very similar to the Apollo-sized capsule.
I interrupted you. Go ahead and finish your thought.
That's a very good approximation, about the size of the Apollo capsules.
Anyway, what's the trick though when you have that limited field of view? Is what, to keep one object in your sight?
Never lose sight. Yeah, always keep it in the TV screen, if you will. And so that's the trick. And I'm actually anxious. We saw a Hoot dock shuttle to Mir the other day. I'm anxious that we have the opportunity here to watch Anatoly dock a Soyuz to Mir here.
How narrow a field of view do you suppose he's dealing with?
Actually, I don't know exactly, but I know it gets narrow enough that he's able to see the docking target through it. So it can't be so wide that he can't resolve the docking target.
Gentlemen, we were sort of surprised by when the undocking occurred. It was about 9 minutes after the hour, and we thought it might be a couple of minutes later than that, but we did see it, and we have it in our tape playback room, according to producer Doug Fernand. So we're going to take another look at the undocking from a few minutes back while we continue our discussion here.
Get the IMAX scene with the sun right on the mirror. We couldn't even see the mirror.
There it goes.
Well visually.
Kevin, as you look at that, is that like letter perfect?
It looked fantastic here. We caught it live, John, and the springs did their job, the latches did their job, gave shuttle a nice gentle push away from Mir, and then when they got about 2 feet away, Hoot started to fly the shuttle away, and it just looked fantastic.
You know, that's a Russian-made docking ring, which was designed initially to be used on the Russian version of the shuttle, the Buran. But it had never been tested with vehicles of this size, had it?
That's correct. It had been tested with the Soyuz module, but it had never been tested with something this big. So this was fantastic. It worked exactly as designed.
You know, what's interesting to me is how it was integrated into the shuttle system. That's got to pose all kinds of technological problems when you're talking about Russian connectors fitting into U.S. connectors and so forth. The fact that this whole system worked must make both programs pretty proud.
It's a giant step in so many areas, both culturally and technically. And so, I think we're just moving forward at a rapid pace here.
Fellas, can you see the picture right now? You can see the thrusters on the Soyuz firing. I've never seen anything like this before, outside of the Apollo 13 movie that I got to see the other night. Isn't that amazing?
It's terrific.
Yeah, there's solar panels there on the Soyuz, and you can see the gases escape as Anatoly Soloviev pilots it around. We've lost our picture from space right now. There again is picture of mission control. We're gonna take a short break in our coverage, but it's going to continue all morning. The fly around of Atlantis around Mir will be coming up in a few minutes. We'll have as many pictures of it as we can, and we'll show them to you. Miles, thank you. Kevin, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen around the world, thank you. Our news coverage continues in a minute. Stay with us.
Give you command.
Shuttle Atlantis and the Russian space station Mir have gone their separate ways.
Atlantis, it's been an inspiring visit with our neighbors in space. We'll look forward to returning.
We agree with that, Dave. We agree 100%. We have all three vehicles in sight at this point, and in one of the simulations, the words cosmic ballet came to mind, and I guess that's where we are.
Well, the two Russia hope that the historic docking of their spacecraft will be only the first chapter in a new story of international cooperation in space. Aboard Atlantis is the American astronaut Norman Thagard, who spent 109 days on the space station. 2 Russian cosmonauts are also returning to the Earth on the shuttle. Atlantis ferried the Russians' replacements to the space station. Well, after an emotional goodbye on Monday, the crews exchanged gifts, including a Houston Rockets T-shirt for cosmonaut Anatoly Soloviev, who's an avid baseball fan.
It has the Rockets T-shirt. It has the emblem and Anatoly. It's a Zuzi Lazar.
This is a gift from friends.
For Anatoly. Love the emblem.
Another present. The logo of the Houston Rockets.
Corey, are you able to see this new emblem on the TV?
Yes, sir. We certainly are. And boy, talk about basketball players in the air. You all are getting more airtime there than anyone ever.
Anatoly can really jump. That's a real American tradition, I guess. We have a few bags of tortillas that we'd like to leave with them.
Atlantis, it's been an inspiring visit with our neighbors in space. We'll look forward to returning.
We agree with that, Dave. We agree 100%. We have all three vehicles in sight at this point, and in one of the simulations, the words cosmic ballet came to mind, and I guess that's where we are.
Atlantis and Mir have parted ways for the moment. The U.S. space shuttle and the Russian space station separated after spending 5 days locked together on a mission which once and for all ended the Cold War space race. CNN's John Holloman joins us now with the details on that. John, a historic mission coming to an end.
I'll say, Riz, that it's a very picture-rich mission as far as I'm concerned. I like to look at the pictures from space. There are going to be a lot of spectacular shots that we see over the next few years as the Russians, the Japanese, the Europeans, the Canadians all work together to build a space station. But it's the pictures that we have received in the past few hours this morning are just quite dramatic. None maybe as dramatic as the shot of the shuttle's separation from the Mir, and this happened about 3 hours ago. You can see the Mir, the Russian space station, there at the top of your screen. The Earth is in the background. The shuttle Atlantis with its tail clearly visible at the lower right side of your screen. The picture that Russian and NASA ground controllers were most interested in today was this separation shot between the shuttle and Mir. The shuttle sprung away from the Russian space station, propelled away by springs, and cameras in the shuttle payload bay showed the Mir, as you can see there, moving away. The cargo bay cameras were also able to bring us a picture of the Russian Soyuz capsule. Watch closely, you'll see its thruster jets being fired, a couple at the top of the Soyuz and one at the lower right. The capsule was flying about 200 feet away. You could see fuel spewing, as I said, occasionally from the right side thruster on the Soyuz as Commander Anatoly Soloviev fired the rocket. And the next big picture came about an hour ago as the shuttle flew in a circle around the Mir. You can see the Soyuz module fairly visible after it was redocked with the space station in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. The pictures kept getting better until the shuttle crew fired its separation rockets. This was when those rockets were fired, and you will be able to see the Mir space station get smaller and smaller, and it'll move to the upper right side of your screen as even after they zoom in the cameras to get one last look at it, the shuttle moved away. Shuttle is now, I guess, more than a mile away from the Mir, and it will continue to separate in its own orbit for the return to Earth.
John, at first, when the Atlantis and Mir were docking, they said what a risky procedure it was. Some said undocking, the separation of the two would be just as much of a potential problem, too.
Well, as it turned out, it was no problem at all. There were a lot of things that could go wrong in the undocking. One, there are latches that look sort of like fish hooks that were holding the shuttle to the Mir. Those latches had to be released all at the proper time, and then the spring system, sort of like a shock absorber in your car in reverse, had to work to push the shuttle back the first few feet. They couldn't risk firing the rockets that close together for the undocking. And that also worked, as you saw in the first picture we showed you of the two ships pulling apart. That was perfect. And now the steering rockets on the shuttle and the steering rockets on the Mir are working. The cosmonauts are back aboard the space station. There was one glitch in this whole thing. There's the computer, the main computer on board the Russian space station failed while the two cosmonauts were outside in that small capsule. So when they came back to redock, some outside lights that the computer was supposed to turn on didn't turn on. They had to sort of do it by flashlight, but they were able to do it. And they're now back inside, flipping switches, turning everything back on for their next 3 or 4 month mission in space aboard the Mir.
And of course, we have the shuttle coming back in 3 days, so we'll keep tabs on that. John, thanks very much for joining us. CNN's John Holliman updating us on what was happening up in space.
It's been an inspiring visit with our neighbors in space. We'll look forward to returning.
We agree with that, Dave. We agree 100%. We have all 3 vehicles in sight at this point, and in one of the simulations, the words cosmic ballet came to mind, and I guess that's where we are.
The U.S. space shuttle Atlantis has moved away from its rendezvous with the Russian Mir space station. In a dramatic end to the 5-day space encounter, Atlantis undocked from Mir just hours ago and resumed Earth orbit. Well, CNN's John Holliman joins us now live with the details. Hello, John. Tell us about the mission.
Riz, it's worked out very well today, from what everybody tells me. The Atlantis shuttle, the Mir space station are apart, as you said, the first time in 5 days. The 8 people aboard Atlantis planning for their return home on Friday. It might not have been the most complex technical feat, but I'll tell you this, the undocking of the 2 spaceships was certainly a complicated picture show.
Concur, separation.
The shuttle and Mir, both weighing more than 100 tons, pushed apart by springs in the docking adapter, more than 200 miles above the Earth. Equally impressive, the pictures taken from the Russian Soyuz capsule showing the 2 ships as they moved away from each other. The shuttle flew a complete circle around Mir to take pictures of every exposed inch of the Russian space station. The idea, to give astronauts who will come here later in the year a realistic view of what they'll be seeing.
Dave, we're working on Block 6A.
Finally, pilot Charlie Precourt and Commander Hoot Gibson fired the separation rockets to send the 2 ships apart once and for all. And you could tell there was some mixed emotion after the shuttle crew watched the space station slip away from view. Finally, the 2 ships could no longer see each other in space, Atlantis flying solo with its 6 Americans and 2 Russians ready to come back to Earth on Friday. The shuttle will land, Riz, on Friday, about the middle of the day in the United States, middle of the afternoon in Europe, and CNN International will, of course, be here to bring it to you live.
Of course will. But, John, this looked all so smooth, so good. 3 craft doing this orbital ballet. Was it all as smooth as it looked?
It was good, Riz, but it wasn't perfect. I'm told we've got some new live pictures that maybe we'll put up on the screen while I talk to you about this. That's a live picture. The Mir space station sort of in the left middle of your screen. It's seen from a camera in the payload bay of the shuttle. What this tells us is that the shuttle and the Mir are not as far apart as maybe we thought they were. They're still within sight distance. I thought the Mir was probably completely out of sight right now. The one thing that almost went wrong today, there was a computer failure aboard the Russian space station while the 2 Russian cosmonauts who were supposed to be manning the station were off in that little Soyuz craft. And because of that, the docking lights on the Mir couldn't be turned on when the 2 astronauts in the escape module came back in. They were able to solve it. They were able to dock using light sources on board the Soyuz, and the computer's been fixed. Everything's back to normal now. Just a moment to catch your breath in this nearly perfect day in space.
And just one of the things that was talked a lot about this mission was the medical tests being done on the astronauts and cosmonauts. Are they going to come back with some amazing details?
They're going to come back very tired, the 3 of them. And I'm told by every astronaut I've asked about this and the medical doctors on Earth that it'll be probably weeks, maybe months, before all the results are turned out. Bonnie Dunbar was asked this question, one of the astronauts on board who's doing the medical testing on the 3 guys who've been up so long. She said, they look great, but we won't really know about the results of these tests until everything is sorted out. They've frozen every bodily fluid the astronauts could produce, and those frozen samples will be thawed out and analyzed in labs over the next month or two once they get back to Earth.
John, we're going to land you on our set on Friday, hopefully, to get you a bit to come down when the Atlantis shuttle comes
I'll
down.
be here.
All right. Thank you very much. CNN's John Holloman there. Well, there's hope.
For the astronauts aboard the shuttle Atlantis. Atlantis is preparing to return to Earth Friday. On board are Norm Thagard and 2 Russian cosmonauts who were picked up from the space station Mir for the ride back to Earth. They are undergoing extensive exercise and medical tests in advance of their return. CNN plans live coverage of the Atlantis landing. It's scheduled for Friday during the 10 a.m. Eastern hour.
And the crew of the space shuttle is doing more medical tests on its 3 newest members. The 3 spacefarers came on board after spending months in the Mir space station. They and 5 fellow astronauts are headed home on Atlantis and due to land on Friday. Well, now to
monitoring the health and the emotions of an astronaut and 2 cosmonauts who are heading back to Earth at the end of the week after a long stay in the space station Mir. CNN's John Holloman reports.
Entry.
The big news from Shuttle Atlantis is the final medical tests and rehabilitation work on the 3 men who've been in space nearly 4 months. Norm Thagard went running on a treadmill, part of a program to help him readjust to Earth's gravity better. His Russian cosmonaut colleagues, who have also been in space for 113 days, were put through their paces by Dr. Ellen Baker and mission specialist Bonnie Dunbar. Thagard says his body seems fine, but emotionally, this has been a rough time in his life.
You're one American on a Russian spacecraft. No one else really speaks English, and there were times when I went days without talking to our folks in the Mission Control Center in Moscow, all of which adds up to a fair amount of isolation.
Shuttle Commander Hoot Gibson spent time in the space lab with Thagard and his Russian cosmonaut buddies. He says the crew is still working hard, even though it's coming back to Earth on Friday.
We are going to be continuing with medical data, getting in-situation medical data on our test subjects, which are the Mir-18 crew, and getting the orbiter generally ready to come back home.
Cameras in the shuttle payload bay have sent pictures of the home planet back to Earth. Pictures the astronauts tell us fail to show just how pretty this place is. John Holloman, CNN reporting.